Hi guys, welcome back to Balls Fan TV, and today we're back after the international break to do the match preview for tomorrow's game against Derry City at Daily Mount Park. Probably the biggest game of the season so far. Huge game in the race for Europe. We're playing a team who are, only a point behind us and are well in the race for Europe like ourselves. And yeah, it's an absolutely massive game, and one that I think we need 3 points from. I think most people will agree with that. Before the international break, we had a 0-0 draw up in the showgrounds against Sligo Rovers, and yeah, it was a pretty frustrating game. It was quite end to end, quite even, but look, we had our chances that we probably could have taken, and yeah, on another day we could have won that game, and look, we know how big 3 points would have been. We would have took a little bit of pressure off us going into this game, but look, that result just made tomorrow even bigger, and yeah, it's very important now that we come out here and get the win. Put ourselves, further in that driving seat for the race for Europe, and in a more secure position to be able to stay in second. It will be a test from the games that we've had against Derry this season. We have been tested in all of them. Even the win in Daily Mount back in May. They had spells, and no, we were beaten up on the Brandywell at the start of the season. Then obviously our more recent encounter with them was a 1-1 draw up in Derry, and we probably weren't at our best that night. We had a poor enough first half, but came out early in the second half. Tierney gets the goal, and we saw it out, relatively comfortably, I suppose, after that. Even though Derry probably had a couple of chances that they could have took, but yeah, this game, it's massive for both teams. Both teams will be looking for, we'll be saying this game as a must win. And there being a home game for us, we'll be looking to come out here and put in a performance that we know we're capable of putting in. We've seen it in many games this season. When there's something on the line, especially at Daily Mount, we've nearly always delivered. You think back to Rovers in June. That was a really big game. We were off the back of I think a loss in Waterford, and we were looking at that game thinking, we need to win that to keep ourselves in the. I suppose at the time we were kind of in a bit of a title race then. And we managed to win that game, of course, 2-0, and probably put in the best performance we've seen this season. I think we might need to see something similar here if we want to get another win. Like that one where, we come out of it thinking, God, that was so big in our season, and that's really going to give us confidence. But look, no one would have had a second now with 7 games to go. Back in March, that would have been a pipe dream. We just got to finish the job now. And 3 points tomorrow will be a big step closer in doing that. Onto the team, I don't really expect many changes. I suppose the one big concern and big disappointment is the fact that Dawson Devoy is suspended. It's not nice having your best player suspended in the biggest game of the season. There's been so many times this season that he's kind of carried us through games. Let's be honest, he's been the main man in orchestrating everything, and he's going to be an absolutely huge loss tomorrow night. There's no disputing that. And look, it's going to be interesting to see how we combat that problem, because there's no one really there that's kind of a like for like, that can come in and be that deep line playmaker. The closest that you might get to that is if you put maybe Archie Meekison in there, or Clark maybe, who can, someone that we know can get on the ball and make something happen. But I think you'd ideally want Clark kind of further forward, linking up with James Taylor and the rest of the attacking players. Meekison maybe could deal with that, but Reynolds probably sees him more as a wide player. So I'm not really sure what we might do. We know Ross Tierney can do a job there. When he first broke through with us in whatever 2019, he kind of started out as a kind of number 8. But I suppose that's one option. But look, it's going to be interesting to see what we do. We've obviously we added to the defence during the break. We brought in Jabril Akadina, an English centre half, 24 years old, quite experienced. He played over 140 games in League One with Cambridge in England. So look, I'm sure he'll be in the squad. I don't know if he'll start, but there's an extra body in the defence that we probably needed. But apart from what we might do in the absence of the void, I don't think the team's going to change at all. But in terms of how we see the game going, I think we need to see a huge performance. I think we need to see, like we mentioned, a Rovers 2-0 like performance here. I think we need to really show something of ourselves. If we can't get up for a game like this, then we probably don't deserve to be in Europe next year. And look, generated some really good atmospheres in Daily Mount this season. I think us as fans, if we can do our bit, I think it'll really help the players do theirs, and go out there and show the energy, show the fight, get on the front foot from the off. Really go for this, because look, there's 7 games left. We're in a real battle for Europe. We need to look at these last 7 games as must wins. And our home games are going to be really important as well. Got tomorrow, then our next week, then you've got Waterford, and then you've got 2 Dublin derbies against Shells and Pats. So those 4 games are going to be crucial in defining the season and seeing where we are. And if we can pick up 12 points from those games, you'd probably be saying we'll be home and dry for Europe. But it's all about doing that. It's one thing saying it, but we've got to go and do it now. Tomorrow's a really huge opportunity to ease a few worries, that we kind of have amongst the fan base now, that that the season could derail, kind of like it did in 2023. Most recently, where we felt like Europe was there and in our hands, and then we let it fall away in the last couple of games. But just got to hope that we'll get ourselves over the finish line and into Europe. The club have backed Reynolds and O'Donnell and Pender now by extending their contracts for a further 2 years. It's up to them to repay the club now and get us over the line and into Europe. And look, it's not just them. The players have to do their bit as well. Go out there and deliver and get us those wins that we so desperately need, and make sure we're not in a real battle then in the last couple of games. And going up the trot for the last game, and we don't want to be going into that thinking don't win and Europe's gone. So yeah, look, a win tomorrow would just put people at ease and add to the belief that we'll get there in the end, and we will get this job done. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 win. It would probably be the biggest win of the season. When you look at Derry, they're right behind us, and we'd be extending that gap then as well with the the teams below us, because most of them are playing in the cup. Draw to the Pats. So but yeah, let's hope us as fans, we can bring the energy, the players can bring the energy then, and we'll have a good night, and we'll get the win, and we can really believe then that come next summer we will be getting those passports out. So yeah, that's where I'll end it. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, comment down below everything headed to the game, our score predictions, and I'll see your reaction the day after. Bye bye.